President-elect Donald Trump weighed in on the attacks in Germany and Turkey. On Twitter, he described the incidents as terror and in separate statements attributed both attacks to radical Islamic terrorism. Mr. Trump didn't cite evidence to support his claim that Islamic extremists were behind the incident, though the White House says it does believe the Berlin attack to be terrorism. Mr. Trump also took aim at former President Bill Clinton today, after Clinton criticized him during an interview with a New York newspaper. Mr. Clinton said Trump doesn't know much and attributed his win to angry white men. Trump responded this morning saying that Clinton doesn't know much, especially how to get people, even with an unlimited budget, out to vote in the vital swing states. They focused on wrong states. CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris is in Washington. Steve, always good to see you. We'll get to that feud between Mr. Trump and Mr. Clinton in a moment, but what kind of tests do Monday's attacks provide for Mr. Trump?
I think two tests. First of all is a test on his communication after these flashpoints, these foreign policy flashpoints. How is he going to react to these things as president? You sort of get a sense of how he reacts to them as president-elect and when he was a candidate. I think people are going to be looking very closely as to how he reacts. Right now he's been doing most of it via Twitter, and he's tempted to pop off on Twitter. And so people are wondering, how is he going to deal with these kinds of things once he's actually inaugurated as president? And that leads to another test, which is how is his foreign policy team going to work with him on these flashpoints as well. Don't forget, Mr. Trump has no government experience, has no experience dealing with these kinds of foreign policy issues, these terrorism issues, and he's bringing some people in, some who don't have that much experience either. He wants to bring in a Secretary of State who has no government experience as well. So we're going to be looking very closely to this group of people as these things happen after he gets inaugurated in January to see how he reacts to all of this.
Mr. Trump seems to be getting ahead of the U.S. intelligence community, labeling the Germany and Turkey attacks as products of radical Islam. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, this is something that he's consistently talked about over the last year and a half, 2 years as a candidate and as president-elect. I mean, this has been one of his talking points, that that President Obama and the United States has not been aggressive enough in dealing with terrorists, especially Muslim terrorists. And he has criticized the president and others for not calling these terrorists what he says radical Islamic terrorists. And so this is really right out of Donald Trump's playbook to react this way to this kind of terrorism and to blame it on radical Islamic terrorism. And I think it's clear what he's going to do as president, which is take a much more aggressive view of this as president and deal with this much more aggressively, at least compared to what he thinks President Obama and Democrats have done over the last 8 years.
All right, Steve, let's backtrack a minute. What do you make of this feud between President-elect Trump and former President Clinton?
Well, it's pretty standard for Donald Trump. I mean, how many feuds have we seen Donald Trump get in over Twitter, especially when he feels somebody has wronged him? And he pointed out this criticism, as you pointed out earlier, that Bill Clinton made of him last week. And so he is basically retaliating via Twitter against President Clinton. I know it's not necessarily traditional to go after former presidents on these kinds of things, but let's just say a lot of the stuff that Donald Trump has been doing as a candidate and as president-elect have not been traditional, so I think he's sort of continuing with that script.
All right, Steve, finally, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is rejecting calls for a select committee to investigate possible Russian interference in the election, putting him at odds with some Republican senators. How do you see this debate fitting into the early days of the next Congress?
I think it's going to be a big deal. It's not going away. I think there are plenty of people on both sides of the aisle who feel that the Russian hacking was a big problem for this country, national security problem, and they want to get to the bottom of it. And whether that means having a special committee or just the intelligence committees looking at it, however that works out, it's still going to be a major storyline that Trump is going to have to deal with, frankly, because Trump hasn't answered questions clearly enough for a lot of people about what he thinks of Russia and his dealings, future dealings with them, as well as the fact that he's nominating again a guy to be Secretary of State who has pretty close ties to Vladimir Putin. So there's no question this Russian hacking story is going to be a major storyline over the coming months.
All right, Steve Chaggaris, always great to see you. Thank you.
You too, Meg. Thanks.